podcast where people reach their goals and develop confidence one mind shift habit at a time. Let's join our host, certified coach Christina.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach. I hope you all have had a great week so far. And I am your host, certified mindset and confidence coach, Christina Calloway. I help athletes, parents, and coaches develop the confidence they need to achieve their goals, both on and off the field of play. I'm excited that you have joined me for another episode on my podcast. Have you ever thought about wanting to get a different way of eating? You know, not just a New Year's resolution where you're talking about losing weight. This isn't about losing weight. I'm talking about getting a whole different lifestyle. During the pandemic, I was able to really explore cooking and experimenting in my kitchen. I mean, after all, time was all we had, right? And I went vegetarian about 11 years ago and then gradually switched over to become a vegan. And while I was working before the pandemic, it kind of got a little rote. I didn't really know what to cook, and I was at a loss with getting bored with my meal planning. Well, during the pandemic, I was able to explore different options, and thankful to Tabitha Brown, I was able to learn a lot of different recipes. For example, Taco Tuesdays became very fun for me because I was able to make taco meat with, hold your horses, pecans. I know, and I see some of you all out there with the scrunched up faces. No, it was really good. Mushrooms is another favorite of mine. There are some great delicacies that you can make with mushrooms, and you might have to, if you got your eyes closed, you don't even know that you're eating mushrooms. You might think you're eating seafood. Well, the guest that I have with me today is a nutrition coach. Her name is Jelly Young. She is a plant-based nutrition coach and works with people to transition to a plant-based lifestyle. She has a master's degree in public health from Emory University, and she is a health scientist by training. She is also certified as a holistic nutrition coach. She has been plant-based for over 7.5 years, and it is her life's passion to spread the message about plant-based living. I am excited to have her join us. Please help me welcome our guest, Jelly Young. Hey, Jelly.
Hey, Christina, thank you so much for having me on here.
You are so welcome. I'm excited for us to have this conversation. I know, as I had already shared, that I got into it just because by way of transition, moving from being vegetarian and then eventually moving over into becoming a vegan. And I have not the background that you have in terms of it being formal, but I do have a lot of food allergies. And so it came by way of that I adjusted to the lifestyle that way. I do know that there are other people that do it for other various reasons, their love for animals. And so it's not only just for health reasons that they do it. And so I'm so happy to have you and all of your knowledge to share with my audience on if they have the curiosity. And I do know that there are going to be those who might even jump into the comments after they've viewed this or watch it and they've got their opinions about meat. And it's not, I just want to put this disclaimer out here. This is not to knock anyone who eats meat. I want to put that. If you're pescatarian or if you're a full-blown meat eater, that is your choice. This is just if you've ever been curious about the plant-based lifestyle, why people might choose it, why you might want to consider doing it maybe once a month or a few times a month. This is just to provide the education for anyone who's out there as to why there is a segment of the population who does prefer to go plant-based. And I'm so glad that you're here to help educate us. And so in getting started with our conversation, I want you to share with the audience how it all started for you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. First of all, I just want to re-emphasize what you just said. Nothing about what I'm going to say here today is about um, judgment or preaching to anyone. Whenever I craft, when I'm going to speak or meeting with people to talk about a plant-based lifestyle, I'm always doing it through the lens of what I wish someone else had told me 10 years ago. Just if you're not in those conversations, then you're not privy to that information. And so, really, there's no judgment. So, really, kicking it off to your question of my background and how I got started here. So, I grew up in Atlanta. I had never met a vegetarian in my life until after graduating from the University of Georgia. So certainly was not trying to do the whole, plant-based vegan lifestyle. I didn't know anything about it. It sounded so extreme, and I just could not understand why someone would make that choice. So for me, how it really happened is that after graduating from UGA, I then joined the Peace Corps and I went to Indonesia where I served as a Peace Corps volunteer and I was an English teacher. And it was amazing being so much closer to the food system. In America, we can walk through the grocery store and pick up a package of chicken on this styrofoam plate wrapped in plastic, and then we can grab a bag of pretzels, and really we can hold both of those and never have to acknowledge that one was a life, one had a soul inside of it, and the other one did not. The way that we've done such a nice job with our packaging. So in Indonesia, when you wanted to eat, chicken, then there was just one memory that sticks with me. Well, actually, there are quite a few, but one that really made me put a few things together. My host family said that we were having chicken for dinner, and I was like, yes, that sounds amazing. They were cooking it. And keep in mind, at this point, still was not interested in being vegetarian or let alone vegan. I had just a normal standard American diet. But my host family there said we're having chicken, and then we all went into the backyard and actually like had the chicken, and we slaughtered the chicken. And what they say about it running around with its head cut off is very real. And it was shocking to me. I had never ever in my life been that close to my food. And then I watched my family as they took the feathers off of it and took all of the guts out of it and things like that. And I just had this moment of disbelief that this happens every single time I eat chicken. So sometimes when I'm eating chicken 2 or 3 times a day, like, this is happening each time, and I've never acknowledged the animal actually, ending its life for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really big connection that I made there. And then, um, so after that, I was much more conscious and aware of, when I was eating meat. I was also going through this beautiful spiritual journey at the time where I had decided I wasn't going to eat processed foods. I was only going to eat foods provided by God. And for me, that still meant animals and eggs. But it was really just getting away from all of those packaged goods. So around that time, I had been in Indonesia for a year and a half, and um, I I got the most dreaded phone call that you could ever imagine when you're living on the other side of the earth. It was that my mom, who was really my best friend at the time, we talked every day despite the 12-hour time difference. that my mom had a massive stroke.
Oh.
And the call from my dad was like, "You need to get yourself on the next plane home. The
Mm,
doctors say that your mom might not be alive when you land, but you need to be here."
mm.
And this was back before Wi-Fi on an airplane was a thing. So really every time the plane would land, having to call and say, "Is my mom still alive?" And that was 36 hours, so I
Oh,
would not
wow.
wish that on my worst enemy, but really, so while I was sitting there with my mom in the ICU every single day in, day out for weeks, um, I was also researching, how can I personally prevent a stroke? Because I'm looking at my mom, those are my genes.
Mm,
I'm crazy to think that that's not my future if I don't start making some changes.
mm,
And I was just digging into so many things online, the research, and what kept coming up was that there's this thing called a plant-based lifestyle, and there's research showing that it can be very helpful in preventing a stroke.
mhm.
And I had never really heard that before. I didn't really know what that meant. But I watched a couple documentaries and everything changed. I mean, I went plant-based overnight.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that's how I got started. Yeah, I just made the decision that I'm not going to do that to my daughter. Like, I'm gonna make all the changes that I can make in my power to do it differently.
Wow. That is very, that story that you told from the catching of the food by watching the family, the host family, catch the food, and then you have to sit there and contemplate, now I've got to eat this after I've witnessed all of this and not be offensive because I'm really no longer hungry. And, but I don't want to offend this family that clearly they've just put all this effort and energy and hard work into catching this meal, which they're super proud of because they're in another part of the country where, or the world, where it is a big deal to be able to, number one, afford to have a chicken, to be
Mhm.
able
Yeah.
to have that. And so I don't want to offend them, but now I am completely freaked out. And but I've got to nevertheless. And then so now you got to swing the pendulum of emotions all the way to the other side, where you get this call from your dad that your mom, your best friend, is now literally fighting for her life, and
Mhm.
you are scrambling because you're like, okay, that I want to see how I can now, with the knowledge that I have, make a difference not only for my life but for future generations that may come from me, or and also other people who may not even be aware of this fact. Because what most people don't understand is that strokes is a preventable
Yeah.
disease,
Yeah.
and
It
it
is.
definitely has to do with lifestyle. So
Mhm.
there are so many questions that I want to ask you that I'm sure the audience, if they were able to, ask you this, and you probably have gotten this from many of the audience that you have spoken in front of, if and when there's talking about, well, eating meat or not eating meat and the spiritual journey that you went on. Let's go ahead and get, the elephant that's sitting in the room. Let's go ahead and address that, from the spiritual side. If God did not want us to eat meat, then he would not have created animals, and he would not have put them on the ark. He wouldn't have told Noah to put them on the ark. What is your response to that?
Okay, I'm kind of laughing because I've actually never heard that argument before. I've heard a lot of arguments, but not that one. I would say, could he not have just put the animals on the ark to be with us? Like, why do we have to assert our dominance? Like, that's actually called speciesism. Like, that's just deciding that humans are more valuable than other animals, and God did not declare that.
Okay, so I'll let you have, but I know I've heard that. I've heard people use that as an argument to, in their
That's creative.
defense. Yeah, and in their defense, that they're saying when they're going against vegans, they're like, and for vegans who say, well, I just, I just don't believe that they're another creature and we should not be doing that. And they're like, well, if God didn't want us to, he wouldn't have created them and he wouldn't have told Noah to put them on the ark because they were there for so many days, they had to eat something. And so I'm like, okay, well, just wanted to see what your response was to that. And so how about when someone is, they're like, okay, now I know my family history and they are, I don't know where to start. Like, you know, why I hear what you're saying, but I really love, I'm from the South. I love my fried chicken. And why go plant-based? I know some people who are plant-based who still have strokes.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the way I personally see it is there are 4 major whys for going plant-based: health, the animals, the environment, and spirituality. So first, digging into health, like most of us know that eating a diet that's high in fruits, high in vegetables, beans, legumes, nuts, that limits processed goods, like that's good for us. Most of us know that. But what's really amazing is that the science community, we have this new emerging field called epigenetics. And epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and the environment you're in can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. So they're finding that lifestyle choices are 80% of the equation on the story of whether a disease will manifest for you. And that includes strokes, diabetes, cancer, heart disease. So that means only 20% is really up to our genes.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
if you've,
great.
yeah, and if anyone is listening to this that has, a parent, a sibling, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent that suffers from something like heart disease, diabetes, stroke,
Mhm.
and if you have ever once thought to yourself, well, that's just inevitably going to be my future, those are my genes, just that's my lot in life, like, I am here to 1000% say that is not true.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and it's powerful that they're discovering that because we have so much more agency over our health than I think we are kind of like brought up to believe.
Right. I
Mhm.
really like the fact that you shared that with the audience because it's that mindset of this is the way I've always been. This is part of our family tree. This is what this is our lot. This is something that I'm just going to have to deal with. My grandmother had high blood pressure. My great grandmother had high blood pressure. My mom has high blood pressure. Therefore, I'm going to have high blood pressure. It's no, you don't have to. You can change that part
Mhm.
through and something as simple, and I am going to use the word as simple as your habits with your eating, something that you can control, your nutrition, your habits with your exercise, your choices. It is just that simple in terms of changing the future of your family history. That's
Yeah.
huge because that number that you just mentioned from someone thinking that, oh, I'm going to get, when I reach a certain age, I'm going to get what everybody else in my family genealogy has had. It's like, no, you don't have to. You
Yeah.
don't have
You
to
don't
do
have
that.
to.
And that brings
Mhm.
us to the next point. Give them some simple practical strategies for going plant-based because people are like, okay, now I hear you kind of got my attention now because you just gave me those statistics. So I thought that I had to get diabetes. I thought that I had to have high blood pressure. I thought that my fate was just doomed. But now you've
Yeah.
got me, okay, I might be considering this plant-based thing, but I bet
Yeah.
it's going to be really difficult. What would you say?
Yeah, so I just want to throw out one other fact before we jump into strategies because I think this is so important and not enough people actually have heard this yet, is that the World Health Organization classifies processed meat, so that's things like salami and processed sandwich meats, that you may be eating, you might be feeding to your children on a daily basis. They've actually classified that as a group 1 carcinogen. This is the same classification as smoking tobacco.
Tobacco.
So that
Yep.
means we know that that causes cancer, and yet we are still eating that on a regular basis and feeding it to people we love. And so, if you're like, okay, cool, I have agency, but like, what's wrong with meat? It's just like there's actually science behind this stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so jumping ahead to strategies and how you can take this and maybe start implementing some more plant-based habits into your life. So everything that I coach on is based off of Dr. McDougall's starch solution. So really getting back to putting starches at the center of a plate. And you might be saying like, egads, isn't starch a carb? Oh my gosh, carbs make me fat. Well, okay, if we look back to like as far back in human history as
Yeah.
we can, quite literally starches have always been at the center of the plate for successful civilizations. It is not until very, very recently that we started this whole low carb diet. And so, what I mean by starches at the center of the plate, we can look at um, Asia. What's at the center of their plate? It's rice.
Hmm.
That's a starch. We have potatoes in South America and corn in Central America, wheat in Europe. There's always starch there at the center. And then recently, this fad of a low carb diet. Well, maybe you've heard of the Atkins diet that says limit your carbs and only focus on meats. And if you haven't heard this, Mr. Atkins died at a very young age of heart disease. So let's not follow his lead. Like, let's not go down that path. We saw how that worked out for him.
Hmm.
So real quick, coming back to like what even is a starch, we have simple carbs. So you have the whole umbrella of carbohydrates. You have one branch which is simple carbohydrates. That is things like sugar, table sugar. Then you have complex carbs. Those are starches. Those are those carbohydrates that you find in nature. So potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, oats, squash, corn. Um, and so really getting back to like putting that as the center. So putting a potato with your meal, and I know you might be like, "Oh my gosh, that would make me so fat, I would gain weight so fast." I promise you, the potato is not actually what is making you fat, it's the butter and sour cream that you layer onto the potato,
Hmm.
um, and so, like, this is, again, coming through the lens of only, focusing on a whole foods, plant-based lifestyle, so not eating animal products too, but, um, putting things like rice and starch at the center.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know this, but potatoes are some of the most nutritious foods on the planet. So
Hmm.
they have vitamin C. They have double the amount of potassium than a banana. They have
Hmm.
tons of fiber. They have B6, which supports immune function. And they even have protein, which might shock some people.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, getting
So
back
I
to putting
think
starches there.
too, the point that I want to make sure that the audience picks up on, while for you overnight switching from one diet to the next worked, it, as we said in the very beginning, this is not a cookie cut solution for everyone. And if you are interested in going plant-based and you want to do it in a proper way, that's why
Yeah.
you have a nutrition coach to consult. And
Yeah.
that's, I want to make sure that I put that disclaimer out there that this is something you should do with someone
Mhm.
and not go it alone. Definitely, you want to consult your physicians and make sure that that's the person that knows your health history, and that you want to make sure that you are doing this in the best way and the healthiest way possible for you. A lot of times when we attempt to do something that is good for us, we might not be necessarily doing it in the right practical way, and a good thing ends up turning into a not good thing. So make sure that if you're interested in doing and going plant-based, that you do consult with your physician first, and then that you get someone on your team, your wellness team, such as a Jelly Young in terms of a nutrition coach, so that you are going about this in the most practical way. Because if you already have health issues that you're dealing with, your strategies for doing this and going about this is going to be completely different from someone who does not have those health challenges. And we need to make sure that that is clear up front. It might be better for you to work in a plant-based diet once a month, as opposed to someone who can start once a week. Again, everyone is going to look different, and it's going to be different for everyone. What would you, since I am a mindset coach, I'm going to throw that in there. So what mindset work for a health journey what does that look like? What would you recommend for individuals?
Yeah, so when I'm working with clients, we focus a lot on mindset, because shifting your perspective on food and what you're putting in your body actually is quite a bit more mindset than anything else, mindset and habits. So I it's so important to recognize that disease is actually created in our grocery stores, right?
Mhm.
Like, at the grocery store, it's not really whether or not you're, like, going to the gym so much as it's the energy that you walk into a grocery store day in, day out, week in, week out, year after year, that really determines your long-term health.
Right.
And so it's so important on our way to the grocery store to really get into the right mindset, to
Mhm.
walk in so that we shop with a purpose and shop for the health outcome that we ultimately want, right?
Right.
Because um, we've all been there when you walk into the grocery store and you're tired, or you're hungry, or you're just in a bad mood, you're over it. What do you come away with? Total junk. And then you eat total junk for an entire
Mhm.
week. Then you beat yourself up. And it's just a really unproductive cycle. So there are actually like 3 activities that I like to offer to people to incorporate into their life. So number 1 is spending your time while you're commuting to the grocery store actually checking in with yourself. I call it meditating, but, like, if you're driving, like, please keep your eyes open, but,
Right.
really, like, tuning in and asking yourself and thinking about what are you hoping to achieve, I like to say, in the next, like, 2 years? What are my 2-year goals?
Mhm.
And then using the time while you're commuting to the grocery store to think, "Okay," and going through the major categories of your life. What do you want your health to look like in 2 years from now?
Mhm.
What do you want your relationships to look like? What
Right.
about your finances? What about your travel? What about your friendships? And really just spending time envisioning that life you want for 2 years from now and getting clear on that, because when you pull into the grocery store and that's what you've been thinking about, you're gonna shop for that person, and that person doesn't need to go down the chip aisle because that's not really gonna get you to where you're going, right?
Right.
And then, like, the second activity I like to offer people, it's similar, but, um, actually, like, pretend calling yourself from 2 years in the future. So, being like, "Hey, Jelly," or, "Hey, Christina, what have you accomplished? Like, where are you living right now? Oh, you're on that beachfront property? Tell me more. What are your relationships like? What are your financials like?" And going through that, because some people actually process and manifest and have to say things out loud.
Right.
So, having that conversation with yourself and that future version of yourself when you pull into the grocery store, again, you're shopping for that version of you, and
Exactly.
it's so different, the choices that you'll make,
Right.
right? And
Absolutely.
then, like, the last thing that I will offer, the last activity is that you can actually set location-based, reminders on your cell phone. So you can literally just go Google how to set location-based reminders on an iPhone, and I'm sure the Galaxy and Androids do that too.
Mm.
But you can have it so that every time you pull into the Publix parking lot, the Publix you always go to, the Kroger, the Whole Foods,
Mhm.
the moment you park your car, your phone will beep and it will tell you a notification that you program. And so that can be like, I'm so appreciative that I'm so healthy for my children and my family.
Oh, wow.
If you
Good.
read that as you walk into the grocery store, it's like, oh, needed to hear that. Thank you.
That's
And
good.
then you can go about your shopping. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
have those programs too. It's really helpful. It's been really beneficial for me as well.
That's excellent. I really like that. I really like the mindset work, and especially that last one, the prompt, in terms of just putting you in that space. Because I also know about do not ever go to the grocery store when you are hungry, but you also saying just checking your mood, like if you're upset or if you're rushing or if you're distracted because you've got a thought about when I leave here I've got to go there, but just being present in the moment. And then always focusing that on who you want to be 2 years from now. And that helps you in terms of your shopping. And that's just always so good. Jelly, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful. And you have definitely set me and my audience up for success in terms of a plant-based nutrition and steps to implement for a new lifestyle. And I always do a call to action. And this is not going to be any different because I want the audience to be able to reach out to you, to follow you, to interact with you, and to get more information, because this was not even a tip of the iceberg when it comes to plant-based nutrition or even how to implement it, how to get started with it. So I just wanted to give them just a little bit of information, but I do expect them to keep getting in touch with you. So they can do that. And again, this information is going to be in the show notes. You all can get in touch with Jelly by her Instagram and Facebook. She's made it very easy for you. It's the same. Her handle's the same on both. It's her name. It's Jelly Young. And also her website, super easy, jellyyoung.com. Just reach out to her. She does do clarity calls. And if you want to do a deeper dive, get a little bit more personal about your specifics, maybe it has to do with where your family history is. Maybe you identified with the personal story that she shared about her mom and what really tipped her over into going plant-based, because that scary moment. And I will share, her mom is doing a lot better. She's come through that really rough time, and she is doing better, thankfully. And so definitely you want to reach out to Jelly so you can find out a lot more about the plant-based lifestyle. Now, Jelly, I do something with all of my guests, and I'm going to do it with you as well. For final thoughts, I ask the guests to share with the audience, what is the one mindset shift that you would recommend to them when it comes to plant-based nutrition?
Whew, man, the one plant-based mindset shift. I think it's a great question. I think that it would be just really like becoming more aware and intentional about the contributions that we're making to the planet. And there's a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of documentaries that we can watch to make that mindset shift and realize that our our fork is one of the most powerful tools that we have access to change the world. And now I can think of a million. And now I'm like, and please use your dollar as your vote at the grocery store. It's the best that you could ever do for this whole world.
Very good. I love it. Thank you again for joining me and on this episode. And I really appreciate the value that you have added in the space of plant-based nutrition. I'm going to say goodbye to my audience, and I'll be talking with you soon.
Perfect. Thank you.
There you have it. This was a wonderful, enriching conversation about plant-based nutrition and just steps on how to implement a new lifestyle. If you've ever wondered, I hear people talking about it, I have tried it. It wasn't successful. I don't know if I did it right. I hope that you've heard something here today that has maybe sparked that interest again. And now you know some statistics as it relates to plant-based nutrition that you didn't know before, and even as it relates to preventable diseases. And even if you are considering maybe doing it once a week or once a month, that will help. And you might say, well, what's the point if I'm not going to change my whole lifestyle to become plant-based? Even making small steps will be a great accomplishment and then not doing it at all. And I do encourage you all to reach out to Jelly to get even more information, because like I shared, there's so much to learn about the plant-based lifestyle and how to go about doing it. And today we just scratched the surface of it. I thank you so much for joining me on this episode. You know exactly where to find me on all of my social media if you are not already joining me. If you are joining me on those platforms, please share me with your friends and your family. You can find me at Christina Mindset Coach on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. My website is christinacc.com. I would love to have a clarity call with you if you are struggling with confidence. Maybe you get butterflies when you have to think about getting up and doing a presentation. It's not about getting rid of the butterflies. It's about putting them in formation and telling them where to fly. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Conversations with Coach. And until our next episode, make it a great week.
Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Coach. Please be sure to follow Coach Christina on all of her social media platforms. And remember, life is only as good as your mindset.